Fact of the matter is, people don't hire companies, they hire people. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Knoxville Business Show. I'm Jason Deal here in Clinton, Tennessee, and with me I've got my one and only brother, Scott Deal. Scott, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jason?
Oh man, I am living the dream. Had a late night working last night. Me and Ryan, we were out in Farragut, Tennessee, working until, I don't know, probably about midnight, working on a house, trying to get it ready for auction. But enough about me. So I obviously know about you. I've known you my whole life, believe it or not.
I've known you your whole life.
Well, tell everybody else about Scott and kind of how you ended up where you're at now, and maybe just, I don't know, spend a few minutes and just tell us a little bit about
Okay. You. Yeah, sure. Well, back in 1972 is when I was born, so that puts me older than I like to admit. But yeah, went to college, got right out of college, and kind of deciding on what to do, as we all are. Always had an interest in cars, but came to Bristol and jumped right into the car business. And it seemed like it was a good fit, and it's a fun business, and I've been in it ever since. Started out selling cars. I've been in it now for 29 years. About half of that time was selling cars, and this last half of the time I've been sales manager at Crabtree, GMC, and Buick.
Awesome. So, and what made you get into the car business? Or why did you try to get a car business?
First of all, is just to have something to do. I didn't want to be in one of those hourly wage jobs. I want to do something different daily, and being at a car dealership, you get to meet a lot of different people. It's always something new and interesting every day. It's always a challenge, and I always like to see myself as a problem solver. If people come to us with problems, they really have a need. So if we can find a way to solve that problem, they get a car, and everybody's happy. It's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, that's that's kind of a unique perspective. You're absolutely right. Generally speaking, I don't think most people wake up in the morning and decide, hey, I just going to go buy a car this morning. I feel like it's kind of a process, that you go through. You see your vehicle deteriorating, and then you realize at some point you've dumped more money in it over the last 6 months. You could have just bought a new car. And then a lot of people just don't even know what they want, I feel like. Talk me through kind of that experience. And then, you're just like, how does that experience work when people come in? Like, how do you kind of guide them and help them through that decision-making process?
Well, to reflect on what you said a bit about people's different levels of interest, it's true. A lot of people get into the car market when they need to, or they're forced to. If their car breaks down or tears up, or they're in an accident, obviously there's that immediate need. Some folks are on a trade cycle every 3 or 4 years, and they know when that's getting close, they just look into trading at that point in time. Some folks will trade when the warranty gets close to running out, or there's different reasons. But also, there's different levels of interest. So you may think, okay, I think I need to look for a car. So that's in the early stages. As that progresses, folks may get online and do a little research, or start noticing what's driving around past them and take interest. Maybe drive through the car a lot. Their interest builds a little bit before they take the next step. The next step may actually be to contact a dealership or go there. But there's all different stages of that. And I always try to put myself in the consumer's position so I can look at it from their perspective. If I want to be an asset to them, to be able to help them in that process and help meet the need that they have, I need to understand where they're coming from. And there's lots of facets to that. Budget, what type of vehicle they want, how their needs have changed from the car that they currently have. And I think it's an all-encompassing issue, rather than just, hey, we got a nice car, do you want to trade? So it's a longer process than you're normally thinking. You can break it down into multiple steps.
Well, and that was kind of what my next question was, have you seen, I'm sure you have, but how do you handle it? Someone who comes in and says, I want to buy the what's the most expensive vehicle you have? They come in and they say, I want to buy this, and you start kind of breaking it down for them, looking at their budget, and have you had to tell someone, I'm sorry, you just can't you can't afford this?
Yeah, being in a being a professional in this career, I would be doing them a disservice if I didn't help guide them in the right direction. The young person that comes in who just has eyes for this $60,000 truck may not be able to afford it. So by working with them on what their budget is, I can help show them the vehicles that do fit their budget. So I have their best interest in mind. I'd be doing a disservice if I just said, okay, here you go, drive it and check it out. Now you can't have it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's maybe someone didn't have that in their life growing up, and then just suddenly you're the first person to tell them no. And so, and let's get into that. Like, so that's the first time they finally met a bad guy, and that was you, kind of tell them maybe this is not the right path to go down. Let's just face it. In my opinion, car dealers kind of have a bad name sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because everyone seems to, not everyone, I think a portion of the population seems to think that, for whatever reason, car dealers are out to get them. Mm-hmm. Why is that, number one? And number two, what do you do to kind of combat that with understanding that could be the point of view when people walk into the dealership? They're already on the defense. They already think that Scott's out to get them. So kind of how does that process work? Because I know it's got to be an interesting process.
Well, that's a good point that you hit upon about the overall perception that the auto industry has. And I would agree. Generally speaking, most folks think, okay, it is time I need to look for a vehicle, but I really don't want to do this. And they'll keep putting it off because of the fear of having to deal with the unknown. And the unknown may just be the process itself or the person that they're dealing with at the dealership. But I think a lot of that comes from gimmicky advertising. And you see that lots of times when it's not clear and you can't understand it. And we all seen these ads where they almost double talk you, or they tell you things that sound too good to be true, or they're not clear about what incentives can be combined with what things. So someone may actually go to a dealership after seeing an ad and it doesn't work out like they thought. Then what happens at that point in time? You have no credibility at all. And so what we try to do here, and what I specifically try to do, is not go with any gimmicks, but to show the customers that we are on their side and we're here to help, and being in their position as to how they're thinking. If you're not putting yourself in their shoes, then you won't really know how to help them.
Yeah, that's really cool, because I've always thought that, oh, there you go, Scott. Your old Jed says hi to you. I think he's watching from Knoxville there. That's kind of always an interesting. You and I had an opportunity, gosh, I guess 9 or 10 years ago, when I was the recruiting commander for Knoxville, and we had a unique opportunity. I feel like we spoke about every day or every other day about marketing and about how the things that we were doing, bringing young men and women in the Army, and talking about that process, the trust that the family had to have was so very similar to buying a vehicle, even though that sounds kind of weird, when you've got, a mom and a dad entrusting you to send their son or daughter into the Army versus buying a vehicle. It's still some of the same emotions. And I would imagine many times it's an emotional event. For me, I think I bought every single vehicle in my life off of you. I'm sure I've got burned on every single time. But no, it's been, for me, it's been a kind of a fluid experience. And, I feel like transparency now is ever so important. And I feel like we have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we probably have a more knowledgeable base of buyers in the car market than ever before. Is that kind of an accurate statement?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now with easy access online to manufacturers' websites, dealerships' websites, and it's easy to compare dealer to dealer, manufacturer to manufacturer. So consumers are more educated now, and that's a good thing. Maybe it's not a good thing for the guy who would want to manipulate figures or try to pull something over on you. But I would think it's a good thing that folks could be more educated in that process before they even arrive or even make contact with the dealer for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just always a really interesting process. And, in the auction industry, which is obviously what I'm in, it's the same. We're selling thousands of items, and we have a very intelligent customer base of being able to pull up the item that we're selling and cross-reference with other, auctions sold items, et cetera. So I think we're just a much more intelligent society because transparency, because the prices are posted just about everywhere. So, I'd like to talk a little bit about how COVID-19 and we were just cruising right along, the United States of America, the world for that matter, back in early mid-February. And I feel like we all kind of took everything for granted. And I feel like for the first time in our society, other people have got to experience almost what a combat deployment was like, where, you just didn't have freedom of maneuver. You couldn't just simply go down to the gas station without thinking about it first and the precautions that you needed to take. And for me, I'm kind of comfortable, quite frankly, because for 5 years and 6 deployments, I had to do that. But, we were all kind of comfortable. And I'm assuming you guys were as well there at Crabtree. And then suddenly this hit. And, you and I have been speaking at least once a week and talking about kind of changes. And I think I talked to you 2 or 3 nights ago, and you were telling me kind of the current situation. So, yeah. So how has it affected, the environment there, number one, and number two, just kind of talk a little bit about that.
Well, as you mentioned, COVID-19 has been a hard hit to the economy here at home and abroad as well, because we truly are in a global economy. It seems like many different industries have been affected drastically, and the auto industry is no exclusion to that. Yeah, it's been difficult. We were very optimistic at the beginning of March and into February because we were just coming out of the slow part of the year for us. Of course, you remember the weather's been terrible with all the rain that we've had, and buying automobiles sometimes can be impacted by that as well. Lengthy days of rain and overcast, it kind of dampens the mood. And buying a car is more than just making sense numerically or economically, but it also is an emotional decision. So getting ready to go into spring, everything's looking up, sun's out, we're turning vehicles, everybody's happy, and then all of a sudden this hits. And it has impacted us a lot. There's been several reasons, I think, but one is with 24-hour media coverage of how COVID-19 has been affecting us and the economy. Obviously, that causes some uneasy tensions with folks. And if you look at how volatile the stock markets are, all those things combined, I think, has affected the volume of sales, at least in the short term, that we need.
Yeah, and I think it's even down to, maybe it's we've realized as a society, wants versus needs. Back in who was that we learned a long time in school? We have that. We have wants, we have needs, and sometimes we confuse those of which ones those are. And I feel like an Acadia may be a want right now, a brand new one, versus a need. Maybe you can take a lower, because obviously, maybe not what you want to hear right now, but I think understanding what that is. So how have you, and you're in leadership position there at Crabtree, how have you had to make some of the tough decisions, and what's some of the adjustments y'all have had to make to kind of get through this? Yeah,
that's a good question. There is some changes that we've made here, and basically you can look at this as dealers are kind of adopting the CDC recommendations. They have those recommendations out there, as well as each state, I think, Tennessee and Virginia is very similar, but there's executive orders that have been stated, and we try to adhere to that as well. And I made a list of a couple of things I'll just run through just to give you some examples of what I mean by that. Social distancing, we're all supposed to be doing that out anyway, which we do here. No more than 10 individuals in the showroom. We provide hand sanitizer all throughout the dealership so folks can use that generously. We disinfect frequently. Matter of fact, every morning and evening in all the surfaces that are frequently touched, like doors and handles and desks, computer keyboards, and the mouse, or is it mice? You call it mouse or mice? What is it? Our staff has been downsized. The operation in general has been, so we have less employees. So, dealers are really focusing on efficiency right now and ease of use. We have less people involved, but that's kind of the idea right now. So we've made some strategic changes, and we're trying to be more efficient with what we do. And it's understandable from a consumer's perspective that a transaction sometimes at an auto dealership takes a lengthy amount of time. And if you look at that interaction, that person-to-person interaction can last a long time. So we've tried to reduce that to where we can do pickups, drop-offs. You really don't even have to show up to buy a car if you don't want. And that's where I would recommend contacting your dealership by email or phone call, because we also have less employees. So you want to make sure someone's here that can help you. But a lot of things can be done outside the dealership itself, and to be much more efficient when you actually are here.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. Like, did you ever think you would do like a virtual showing of a vehicle? Or, there's so many different techniques that you can use to ensure that you're keeping up with this, in staying in compliance with the CDC guidance.
You're exactly right. And Facebook Live has worked great. So we can just hold the phone up, walk around, do a little walk around presentation. Folks can show up, keys can be in the car, very minimal person-to-person contact if need be.
Yeah, and we've kind of implemented something very similar to that. We just had an auction that closed out that had 650 items. It's a 3,000 plus square foot home. We had 160 people who won items. By the way, they had 3 days to come get their items. So as you can imagine what a nightmare that is to ensure that we're complying with CDC's guidance and the governor's guidance. So, keeping that distance apart, like we don't even allow more than one family out of their vehicle at a time.
Right.
So it is, as a company, we've had, instead of having 3 people pick up, now we have 5. So it's just, yeah, it's wild. So we got a question coming in here. It says, do you think that you'll continue using these new techniques after the all clear?
I think it's hard to say what will extend in the long term versus the short term, because the reason I say that is because some folks are more attentive to it than others. Some folks just kind of want to look at it as a traditional shopping experience, and at that point in time, we just wouldn't ride with customers. They can test drive on their own. But other folks want to have, as we spoke, the minimal person-to-person contact. So I think it all boils down to the individual, and we want to be as accommodating as possible. So I think some of this will change the way that not just the auto industry operates, but especially restaurants and other industries.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for real. So I was on a podcast 2 days ago. It was a national podcast, and the host asked me, so I'm going to ask you. I thought it was a pretty interesting question. So Scott, do you think that we as a society, as Americans, we have changed the way that we think and the things that we do forever because of COVID-19? And, you can talk specifics or you can talk generalities, but do you think that we've had a mental switch and we're going to be adjusting how we kind of interact and do business?
I do think to some extent, this is something that we haven't gone through before in our lifetimes. So I think there will be things implemented that continue to stay. And I think that is more prevalent probably in the restaurant industry. I think that in their situation where, you have food, you have the susceptibility to infect more people frequently, I think those things will change. I think it's probably going to be for the benefit. But there will definitely be some changes that will always occur. And I think probably just the practice of keeping things cleaner than we have in the past, especially those frequently touched surfaces. So I think that'll be a practice that will continue. And I think that's an interesting question, but and I'm interested to hear from others about that as well.
Yeah, really, because obviously you and I don't make up society, but my response, believe it or not, was very similar to what you just said. And I think it's I don't know, maybe it's the blood in us.
Well, yeah, those are obvious things that we probably all see, but there's other things that we're probably not even aware of yet. My concern may be with schools not being in. Will that affect kids next year based on what happened this year? I don't know, but all I know is that Maggie is extremely disappointed in missing her senior year of softball.
Yeah, and for those of you watching, my niece, Scott's daughter, I mean, she's a senior, and she just signed at King University, so she's going to be playing there next year. We're all super excited about that. But if we can all, I think we can all relate to this. Our senior year, I can remember literally crying on the track after our last track, event. I mean, yeah, just an emotional time. And we as parents, we got to figure out how to adjust that because, again, it's not like we've seen anything like this before. But I think our lives have certainly changed. It's just going to be how we kind of, deal with this throughout the future. Because this is likely going to happen again, something to this effect. We just don't know exactly what that looks like yet. Mm-hmm. So, listen, brother, I told you I was going to keep it at 30 minutes. We've been going for about 24. I know you're a busy man. I can't thank you enough, but I've got one very important question that everybody I think is going to want to tune into here and spend as much time as you want talking about this. But, is it a good time right now? And I want and talk specifics if you want to buy a vehicle and to sell a vehicle. Kind of talk to us about that. I have no idea.
Yeah. Look, if you and everyone watching is like me, we always want to know when there's a good deal out there. And we always want to know that we took advantage of the good deal, because when you miss the good deal, it comes back to haunt you forever, right? but we have to be transparent and honest and open about this. Manufacturers and dealers always have some incentives in place, and that may be in the way of rebates, that may be in the way of special APR rates, or just special discounts. And there's always something going on at all the time. It always is. It kind of fluctuates though. It's up and down. But most folks may agree that the best deals typically are year-end or closeout. Those vehicles that are left over, you always hear those leftover deals are the best because the discounts are deeper. And that's true. But a lot of times what happens at that point is if you're trying to buy a 19 that's left over, or an 18 even so, it's probably there because it was overlooked. Maybe it's not the right colors and equipment combination, and the choices just aren't enough to maybe find the one you want exactly. So here's what's going on right now. So I'll give you some facts. I'll give you some incentives that are going on, and let the viewers decide if it's a good time or not. I think you'll be surprised. There's some new things that's going on that we haven't done in the past. I speak, maybe for the auto industry generally, for our dealership specifically. Because all manufacturers aren't doing the exact same things, and all dealers don't look at it exactly the same way. But I made a couple notes. I'm going to run through this with you. To all the viewers out there that are watching, you probably have heard of supplier pricing. And General Motors has always set aside a special pricing program for folks that supply materials, labor, and other things like that to General Motors. So you get a special pricing program. And it's rather than starting out at MSRP, working your way down and then taking off rebates, you start at a much lower number to start with, and you still get the same incentives that the other consumers do. So that's still going on. Suppliers get supplier, but listen to this. This is who is included now. All military personnel, active, reserve, or retired, can take advantage of supplier pricing. Okay. First responders, it's just been added recently. Firefighters, police, EMT, paramedics, 911 dispatchers, healthcare professionals. If you want to see what healthcare professionals are included, they're included all healthcare professionals defined by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and that link can be found on the United States Department of Labor website. And it's not just your nurses and doctors. I'm just going to name a few: chiropractors, dentists, exercise physiologists, medical transcriptionists, occupational therapists, optometricians, podiatrists, veterinarians. This is a long list, multiple pages, so it really offers this to a lot of people that were not able to get it before. Okay. Also, educators, teachers, administrators, and also support staff can take advantage of supplier pricing. And this is a new one too. College program has been added to where if you're enrolled in a 2-year or 4-year college or nursing degree, even up to 2 years of graduation, you can take advantage of supplier pricing. All right, does that make sense? Here's the big news. Okay, the big news is you can combine that with all the incentives that are out there, and the incentives now being offered are like year-end closeout incentives. So it's like clearance pricing. So you get to start out with the lower pricing and take advantage of the rebate. Now, for some folks who will keep one for a long time and have a longer trading cycle, listen to this now. You can get 0% for 84 months.
What?
Yeah, unless you've been watching some TV lately and have heard this, that's probably the first time you've heard it. 0 for 84 months. Now, you don't have to go with 84 months. It's up to 84 months. So you may just want to do it for 60 months or 72. But that's an unheard of offering so far. So here's what we're dealing with. Overall volume has been affected recently. So there's lots of cars out there now. The supply is great. So when the supply is great, then there's more choices, and it's likely you'll find one that you really like rather than having to settle for something at the end of the year to try to get a good deal on it that doesn't really suit you exactly. And you can also take advantage of huge rebates or the 0 for 84. So it's really some things we have not had before. So this is the time to take advantage of that deal that that you wish you had taken advantage of later on. I know it's probably not on everyone's top priority list to trade cars right now, but really it's a time you really need to consider it.
That's incredible. I mean, wow! Kudos to GMC and to your dealership there for rolling out those. That is so. I mean, that says a lot, I think, about the industry to offer those incentives to the people who's on the front line right now. Quite frankly,
General Motors has been really conscious, and we read this when we were in school in their history books. They actually built tanks back during the war, and rather than sitting on their buttocks when they weren't producing cars, they did that. So now what they're doing is offering some great deals, and they're actually making 50,000 face masks a day. And they've contracted, to make 30,000 respirators. So while those lines are down and not producing vehicles, they're working on that too. So
awesome. We're in the greatest country ever known to man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got a couple other minutes, I may just mention about used cars as well. Those are incentives available on new, but specifically speaking for used vehicles, inventories are high for those as well. And the way used vehicles work, it's like anything else in the country. It's supply and demand, and the more supply there is, then generally you can get a better buy on it. Prices have dropped, and to reflect back to what we were talking about, transparency and being as concise and easy to use and efficient as we can. We've got everything priced clearly on the windshield too. Most dealers are doing the same thing. So you can get on their website, go to manufacturers' websites, go to dealers' websites, and look at that updated, latest market price on used vehicles too. So it's a good time to take advantage of one of those.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds to me like I think the answer is clear, but ultimately at the end of the day, you got to make the best decision for your family if it's time to buy a vehicle. But great information. So Scott, if we have viewers in the Southwest Virginia, East Tennessee area, and they are interested in buying a vehicle, how can they get up with you?
Well, it's easy to get up with us. You can go to our website, crabtreegmc.com. So you can do that. Phone numbers are listed there. You can access our Facebook page. Just search for Crabtree GMC. You can call us directly. We have an 800 number. We have a local number. If we need to give those out, we're going to do that too. But the easiest access for lots of information at your fingertips is to visit the website, crabtreegmc.com.
crabtreegmc.com. Ladies and gentlemen, go check it out. You've been hearing live from Scott Deal, manager at Crabtree GMC. We thank you all for joining us today. Brother, I love you.
Appreciate you having me here.
Absolutely. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the Knoxville Business Show.